When my son Marcus told me I had to be gone by Christmas morning, I quietly packed my bags and left. By December 26th, I had called the police about the $180,000 property deed that was still in my name. And that was just the beginning. Justice had to happen. You won't believe what I did next. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening in the comments. My name is Robert Chen, and I'm 68 years old. I've been a successful plumbing contractor for over 40 years now. Started my own business back in 1982 and built it into Chen Plumbing Services, one of the most trusted companies in our city. Today, my business is worth about $300,000, and I own property worth another $400,000. My wife Linda died from breast cancer 5 years ago after 38 years of marriage. She was the love of my life and my business partner in everything we built together. We had 2 children. Our daughter Sarah moved to California for her career and visits twice a year. Our son Marcus is 35 years old and lives right here in town with his wife Jessica and their 2 kids. Marcus is my oldest child, and after Linda died, he became the person I relied on most for family support. I helped him buy his first house when he was 28 years old. Put down $40,000 for his down payment, so he and Jessica could get started in life. Linda and I were proud to help our son build a stable foundation for his family. But something started going wrong with Marcus about 2 years ago when he got promoted at his job and started making more money. He began acting like he knew better than me about business decisions and life choices. "Dad, maybe you should retire and enjoy your golden years," he would tell me. "You don't need to work so hard at your age." These suggestions felt disrespectful to someone who had built a successful business from nothing. Marcus also started making comments about my house and my lifestyle that bothered me during family visits. "Dad, this old house is too big for one person," he would say. "You should sell it and move into a smaller place or assisted living." His advice ignored the fact that this was the home Linda and I had shared for 25 years, and I wasn't ready to give up those memories. But the real problem started when Marcus and Jessica began having financial difficulties last year. Their mortgage payments were getting harder to handle, and they were struggling with credit card debt from Jessica's shopping habits. "Dad, we're having some money problems," Marcus told me. "Could you help us out with a loan or something?" I wanted to support my son's family, so I agreed to help. What I didn't realize at the time was that Marcus wasn't asking for a simple loan. He wanted me to do something much bigger that would change our entire family situation. "Dad, instead of loaning us money, what if you moved in with us?" he suggested. "You could sell your house and use that money to pay off our mortgage. Then we'd all be living together as one big happy family." The idea made sense on the surface because my house was worth about $180,000. If I sold it and moved in with Marcus, the money could solve their financial problems while giving me companionship in my old age. Linda would have liked the idea of all of us being together, I thought to myself. So I agreed to Marcus's plan, but instead of selling my house right away, I decided to transfer the deed directly to Marcus while keeping the right to live there as long as I wanted. This way, Marcus can use the house as collateral for a loan to pay off his mortgage, I explained to my lawyer. And I can still live in my home with Linda's memories. It seemed like the perfect solution for everyone involved. Marcus was thrilled when I transferred the deed to his name. "Dad, this is amazing," he said with excitement. "You're saving our family, and we'll never forget what you've done for us." He used my house as collateral to get a loan that paid off his mortgage completely. Jessica was happy too, because their financial stress was finally over. For about 6 months, everything seemed to work perfectly. Marcus and Jessica were grateful for my help, and I was happy to still be living in the house Linda and I had called home. "Robert, you did the right thing helping your son," my neighbor Mrs. Patterson would say. "Families should stick together during difficult times." I felt good about my decision to put family first. But then things started changing in ways that made me uncomfortable and worried about my living situation. Marcus began acting like he owned my house completely, not like someone who was just holding the deed while I lived there. "Dad, we need to talk about some house rules," he said one day. "Since this is technically my property now, there are some changes we need to make." Last month, those changes became demands that made me feel like a tenant in my own home instead of the person who had lived there for 25 years. And 3 weeks ago, Marcus said something that changed everything between us forever. Now let me tell you exactly how I built my son's dream life while Marcus learned to take everything for granted. This story starts 42 years ago, when I was just 26 years old, with nothing but a used truck and some basic plumbing tools. Most people thought starting a plumbing business was too risky and competitive for a young man with no connections. But I could see that our growing city would need someone willing to work harder than everyone else. I started Chen Plumbing Services with a $2,000 loan from the bank and pure determination to succeed. Linda supported me completely, even though we were living paycheck to paycheck in those early years. "Robert, if you believe in this business, then I believe in you," she told me. We lived in a tiny apartment and saved every penny to buy better tools and equipment. The breakthrough came when I won a contract to do all the plumbing for a new apartment complex in 1985. The project was bigger than anything I had attempted before, but I knew it could establish my reputation in the local market. Linda kept the books, while I managed every aspect of the work from pipes to final inspections. That apartment complex launched my career and led to bigger projects over the following years. Within a decade, Chen Plumbing was handling commercial buildings, new housing developments, and emergency repairs across the entire metro area. I reinvested every dollar of profit back into the company to buy trucks, equipment, and hire the best workers available. By the time Marcus was born in 1988, we were making real money and building a solid foundation for our family's future. But Linda and I never forgot our humble beginnings or the sacrifices required to build something from nothing. "Robert, let's make sure Marcus understands the value of hard work," Linda would say. "Money should be earned, not just given away." We both agreed that our children needed to learn responsibility and appreciation. Marcus grew up watching his parents work long hours to build our family business. He had chores around the house, earned his allowance through good behavior, and worked summer jobs at the plumbing company during high school. "Marcus, success requires effort and treating people fairly," I taught him. "Everything we have today came from making good decisions and working harder than everyone else." Marcus seemed to appreciate these lessons about character and work ethic. When Marcus went to college, I paid for his education completely, so he could focus on his studies without financial stress. State University Business Program for 4 years, $48,000 in total costs. Marcus graduated with decent grades and got a job at a local insurance company. Linda and I were proud of the responsible young man he had become. After Marcus got married to Jessica, I continued helping them financially when they needed assistance. Down payment for their first house, $40,000. Car purchase when Jessica's old vehicle broke down, $18,000. Wedding expenses that got out of control, $12,000 more. I was happy to help my son build a stable life for his growing family. But Marcus always showed genuine gratitude for my help during those early years. "Dad, thank you so much for helping us get established," he would say sincerely. "I know how hard you work to build the business that makes this possible." Marcus understood that my generosity came from love and decades of sacrifice, not from some endless money tree. When Marcus and Jessica had their first child, I was excited about being a grandfather and helping support the next generation. "Linda, this little boy represents our family legacy," I told my wife. We both looked forward to watching our grandson grow up with opportunities we never had as children. But something started changing in Marcus's attitude after he got his promotion at the insurance company 3 years ago. The grateful son slowly became someone who expected financial support without showing much appreciation for the person providing it. "Dad, could you help us with the kids' daycare costs?" became a regular request without any acknowledgement of previous help. I started noticing that Marcus's thank you messages became shorter and less frequent over time. Instead of detailed appreciation for my assistance, he would send quick text messages like, "Thanks for the help," or just, "Got it." The personal connection and genuine gratitude were disappearing as he became more comfortable with regular financial support from his father. What bothered me most was Marcus's growing assumption that my help would always be available whenever he needed it. He would make expensive plans for vacations or purchases, then ask me to fund them like it was my responsibility to support his lifestyle choices. "Dad, we found this great dining room set, but we need help with the payments," became typical conversations that ignored his own budget limitations. The house situation was supposed to be temporary help during their financial crisis, but instead of motivating Marcus toward independence, my generosity seemed to create more entitlement and less appreciation. Marcus was becoming comfortable taking ownership of my property while treating me like a guest in my own home. At Thanksgiving dinner last month, Marcus was about to show me exactly what he thought about the father who had built his entire comfortable life. Let me take you back to that terrible December evening when Marcus said the words that started my perfect legal revenge. It was December 18th, exactly 1 week before Christmas. I was sitting in my favorite chair in the living room watching the evening news when Marcus walked in with Jessica beside him. Both of them looked serious and uncomfortable, like they had rehearsed what they were about to say. "Dad, we need to talk about your living situation here," Marcus began without any warmth in his voice. Jessica stood behind him, looking nervous but supportive of whatever they had planned. I could tell from their body language that this wasn't going to be a friendly family conversation about holiday plans or gift ideas. "What do you mean, son?" I asked, genuinely confused about why they seemed so formal and distant. "Is everything okay with you two?" I was expecting maybe they needed some advice about the kids or wanted to discuss Christmas dinner arrangements. I had no idea they were about to turn my entire world upside down. "Dad, Jessica and I have been talking, and we think it's time for you to find your own place," Marcus continued coldly. "This arrangement isn't working out the way we thought it would when you moved in." His words hit me like a punch to the stomach from someone I had raised and supported for 35 years. "Marcus, I don't understand," I replied, trying to process what he was saying. "I thought we agreed that I could live here as long as I wanted when I transferred the deed to you. The house that Linda and I had called home for 25 years was suddenly being taken away from me by my own son." Jessica finally spoke up to support her husband's cruel decision. "Robert, we need our privacy and space to raise our children without feeling like we have to take care of an elderly relative," she said. "It's nothing personal, but this situation has become too stressful for our family. The woman whose mortgage I had paid off was calling me a burden that needed to be removed. "But this is my home," I said, feeling my heart breaking as I realized my own family was abandoning me. Linda and I lived here for decades, and all my memories of her are in this house. The place where I had planned to spend my remaining years was being stolen from me by people who owed me everything. Marcus showed no emotion as he delivered the final blow to our relationship. "Dad, you need to be gone by Christmas morning," he announced. "We've already made arrangements for you to stay at the extended stay motel until you find a permanent place. 7 days to pack up 25 years of memories and leave the home where Linda had died in my arms." "Marcus, Christmas is next week," I said in disbelief. "How can you kick your father out right before the holidays?" I was thinking about Linda and how heartbroken she would be to see her son treating me like some unwanted stranger who needed to be disposed of quickly. "Dad, we've made up our minds," Marcus replied without any sympathy. "The motel room is already paid for through the end of the month, so you'll have time to figure out your next step." He was talking to me like I was some problem tenant, instead of the man who had raised him and given him everything. Jessica added the final insult to their eviction notice. "Robert, we think this will be better for everyone in the long run," she said. "You'll have your independence, and we'll have our family space back." The woman who had spent my money on shopping sprees was telling me that losing my home was actually good for me. I sat there in shock as Marcus and Jessica explained their timeline for getting rid of me. Christmas Eve would be my last night in the house. Christmas morning, I needed to be completely moved out so their children could enjoy the holiday without their grandfather around. My entire life was being dismantled so they could have a more comfortable Christmas celebration. "What about my belongings?" I asked, looking around at 25 years of furniture and memories. "Some of this stuff belonged to your mother, Marcus." I was hoping to appeal to whatever respect he might still have for Linda's memory and our family history together. "Dad, take whatever personal items you need," Marcus said dismissively. "But most of this furniture is too big for wherever you end up living next." He was already planning to keep the furniture that Linda and I had bought together, along with the house itself and everything else I had worked for. The next 3 days were the most humiliating of my entire life. Packing my clothes, photos, and a few small items that held memories of Linda, while Marcus and Jessica went about their normal routine. "Are you sure you don't want help packing?" Marcus asked once, but I could tell he was just being polite and didn't really care about my situation. On December 21st, I loaded my belongings into my truck and drove to the extended stay motel that would be my home for Christmas. The room was small and depressing, with thin walls and a view of the parking lot. This was where my son thought his father belonged after everything I had done for him and his family. Christmas Eve night, lying alone in that motel bed, I made a decision that would change everything between Marcus and me forever. If he thought he could steal my house and abandon his father, he was about to learn exactly what legal property ownership really meant in this country. The son who wanted me gone was about to discover that the deed transfer had some conditions he never bothered to read. After Marcus kicked me out on Christmas Eve, I sat alone in that depressing motel room and pulled out the property deed documents I had saved from the house transfer. I needed to look at the legal paperwork that showed exactly what my son thought he owned and what rights I had given up when I trusted him with my home. Sitting on that uncomfortable motel bed, I opened the folder that contained the truth about who really controlled my $180,000 house. The first document was the original deed transfer I had signed 18 months ago when Marcus asked for help with his mortgage problems. Transfer of property from Robert Chen to Marcus Chen with life estate rights reserved. The title read clearly. I had completely forgotten about that legal language when my lawyer had prepared the paperwork. The phrase life estate rights reserved was about to become very important. I found the section that explained exactly what life estate rights meant in legal terms. Grantor retains the right to occupy and use the property for the duration of his natural life. The document stated clearly. Grantee cannot sell, mortgage, or otherwise encumber the property without grantor's written consent. Marcus owned the deed, but I owned the right to live there forever. The most important paragraph was buried on page 3 of the legal paperwork. Grantee acknowledges that grantor's occupancy rights cannot be terminated except by grantor's death or voluntary surrender of said rights. Marcus literally could not kick me out of my own house according to the legal documents he had signed when accepting the deed transfer. I read that section 3 times to make sure I understood what it meant for my current situation. Marcus had no legal authority to evict me from the property. The deed transfer gave him ownership, but it specifically protected my right to live there as long as I wanted. Jessica and I think it's time for you to find your own place was not a legal reason to remove someone with life estate rights. But there was more legal protection that I had forgotten about when signing the original documents. Any attempt to interfere with grantor's peaceful enjoyment of the property shall constitute breach of this agreement and grounds for immediate deed reversal. If Marcus was harassing me or making my life difficult, I could legally take the house back completely. I also found the section about property improvements and financial responsibilities. Grantee assumes all mortgage obligations, property taxes, insurance, and maintenance costs effective immediately upon deed transfer. Marcus was responsible for all the expenses while I maintained the right to live there rent-free. He was paying to maintain a house where I had guaranteed legal occupancy. The lawyer's notes attached to the deed explained the tax advantages and legal protections this arrangement provided. Life estate with remainder interest allows property transfer while maintaining occupancy rights and reducing estate tax liability, the notes stated. Common arrangement for elderly parents transferring property to adult children while retaining residence security. Looking at these documents made Marcus's behavior even more outrageous than I had realized during our confrontation. "Dad, you need to be gone by Christmas morning," was him trying to illegally evict someone with permanent occupancy rights. The son who thought he could steal my house had actually signed papers guaranteeing my right to stay there forever. My cell phone was sitting next to me on the nightstand, and I started thinking about calling my lawyer, David Morrison, who had prepared all these documents. David knows exactly what rights I have under this deed transfer, I said to myself. He can explain to Marcus what legal property ownership really means. But it was Christmas Eve, and I decided to wait until after the holidays to take action. The motel financial records from Marcus were equally interesting to review in light of my legal rights. Extended Stay America, room 237, paid through December 31st, was the receipt he had given me. Marcus was paying for my temporary housing, while illegally evicting me from property where I had guaranteed occupancy rights. He was spending money to violate a legal agreement he had signed. What Marcus didn't realize was that his attempt to evict me could actually result in him losing the house completely. The deed reversal clause gave me the right to reclaim full ownership if he interfered with my peaceful enjoyment of the property. Kicking me out right before Christmas definitely qualified as interference with my housing rights. But the most painful part of reviewing these legal documents was realizing that Marcus had never actually read or understood what he was signing when accepting the deed transfer. He thought getting the deed meant he owned the house completely and could do whatever he wanted with the property and the people living there. The property tax records showed another problem with Marcus's assumption about ownership. Life estate holder responsible for property taxes during occupancy period, the documents stated clearly. Even though Marcus held the deed, I was supposed to be paying the property taxes as long as I lived there. But Marcus had been paying them himself, which created additional legal complications for his eviction attempt. Looking at my deed rights again made Marcus's Christmas eviction even more insulting than I had understood during our conversation. We need our privacy and space was not a legal reason to remove someone with life estate rights. The son who thought he could abandon his father had actually guaranteed my right to stay in that house forever. My decision to fight Marcus's illegal eviction wasn't just about the house itself. It was about teaching respect and legal consequences to someone who thought he could ignore signed agreements. If Marcus thought he could steal my home and abandon his father, he was about to learn exactly how property law really works in this country. Sitting there in my motel room that night, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. I felt like I had real power over someone who had hurt me deeply. The son who wanted me gone was about to discover exactly who controlled that house legally. The day after Christmas, I woke up in that motel room with a clear plan about what I needed to do to Marcus. He thought he could illegally evict me by saying I needed to be gone while having no idea about the life estate rights that protected my occupancy. Marcus had treated me like some unwanted tenant who could be thrown out on the street. It was time to show my son exactly who really controlled his dream home legally. I spent the morning organizing my strategy for maximum impact on Marcus's understanding of property law. This wasn't going to be some emotional argument or angry phone call that he could dismiss as his confused father's reaction. This was going to be a calculated legal demonstration that would permanently change his attitude toward the man who had given him everything. I decided to wait until Marcus felt completely secure in his illegal possession of my house before revealing his legal violations. New Year's Day would be perfect timing because he and Jessica would be celebrating their fresh start without the burden of an elderly father. When Marcus discovered that his Christmas eviction was completely illegal, the timing would create maximum embarrassment and legal consequences. But I also wanted to make sure the entire legal system understood exactly why Marcus needed to face consequences for his actions. This wasn't about being petty or vindictive toward a son making mistakes. This was about enforcing legal agreements and teaching important lessons about property rights and family obligations that can't be ignored just because someone finds them inconvenient. My plan was to contact my lawyer David Morrison first thing on January 2nd, when his office reopened after the holidays. David, I need you to review the deed transfer documents and explain Marcus's legal violations, I would tell him. My son has illegally evicted someone with life estate rights, and I want to pursue every available legal remedy. David would understand the seriousness of Marcus's property law violations. I also planned to contact the police department's Civil Enforcement Division to file a formal complaint about my illegal eviction. Marcus had forced someone with guaranteed occupancy rights to leave their legal residence through intimidation and false claims about property ownership. Officer, I need to report an illegal eviction by someone who doesn't have the legal authority to remove me from my property, I would explain calmly. The timing of this legal action would be perfect because Marcus would be settling into his comfortable assumption that he had successfully gotten rid of his inconvenient father. New Year's Day celebrations would turn into legal crisis management when he discovered that Christmas evictions don't override signed property agreements. His celebration of independence would become a lesson about legal consequences. I calculated the complete disruption this would cause to Marcus's comfortable assumptions about property ownership. He would face potential criminal charges for illegal eviction, civil lawsuits for violating my life estate rights, financial penalties for breach of contract. The house he thought he owned free and clear would become a legal nightmare that could cost him everything. But more importantly, Marcus's friends and co-workers would discover that he had illegally evicted his own father from property where the father had guaranteed occupancy rights. "Marcus, you can't just kick someone out of a house where they have life estate rights," they would say in shock. "That's illegal eviction, and you could face serious legal consequences." The social embarrassment would match the legal problems he had created through his disrespectful behavior. I also wanted to document everything that had happened during my Christmas eviction for potential court proceedings. If Marcus tried to claim that I had left voluntarily, or that he had legal authority to remove me, I needed proof that his actions constituted illegal eviction of someone with protected occupancy rights. His "Dad, you need to be gone by Christmas morning" statement could be verified by Jessica and would prove his intent to illegally remove me. The most satisfying part of my plan was knowing that Marcus's desire to have his house without his father would be granted in exactly the opposite way he intended. He had wanted me gone so he could enjoy full property ownership without family obligations. Now he would learn that illegal eviction could result in him losing the house completely through deed reversal provisions. I spent the afternoon reviewing all my legal documents to make sure Marcus couldn't successfully defend his eviction based on property ownership claims. The life estate rights were clearly stated and legally binding, regardless of who held the deed. Marcus's name on the property title didn't give him authority to remove someone with guaranteed occupancy rights protected by signed agreements. I also prepared talking points for when I inevitably had to explain my legal action to family members and friends. "Marcus illegally evicted me from property where I have life estate rights," I would say calmly. "I'm simply enforcing the legal agreements he signed when accepting the deed transfer." The logic would be unassailable and completely based on established property law and signed contracts. That evening, I called my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, who lived next door to my house, to ask about Marcus and Jessica's holiday celebrations. "Robert, they had a big party on Christmas Day," she told me. "Jessica kept talking about how nice it was to finally have their privacy and space. Their celebration of my absence would become evidence of their intent to permanently violate my legal occupancy rights." Over the next few days, I watched Marcus continue his normal routine while having no idea that his Christmas eviction had violated multiple laws and contractual agreements. The son who thought he could steal his father's home was about to discover exactly what legal property ownership really means. 1 week after I contacted my lawyer and filed the police report, my phone started ringing frantically on January 8th. It was Marcus calling me at the motel in complete panic about something his wife had told him. "Dad, Jessica got a call from some lawyer asking questions about our house and your living arrangements," he said urgently. "She thinks you've hired an attorney to cause problems for us about the property transfer." "Marcus, that sounds like someone is looking into your legal situation," I replied calmly, like I had no idea what could be causing his concern. "Did Jessica explain why a lawyer would be interested in your property arrangements?" I wanted to hear exactly how Marcus had discovered my legal actions before confirming his worst fears about facing consequences. "Dad, Jessica said the lawyer was asking about life estate rights and illegal eviction procedures," Marcus continued with worry in his voice. "She thinks you're trying to sue us because you're angry about having to move out of the house." He was trying to understand what had triggered this legal investigation into his Christmas eviction. I stayed completely calm while listening to Marcus's growing panic about his legal situation. "Marcus, maybe someone is just making sure that property transfers are handled according to the law," I said matter-of-factly. Sometimes legal professionals need to verify that all parties understand their rights and obligations under signed agreements. I was enjoying his slow realization that Christmas evictions might have legal consequences. "Dad, are you behind this lawyer contact?" Marcus asked directly, his voice getting more nervous. "Because the timing seems really suspicious just 2 weeks after you moved out of the house." He was starting to connect his illegal eviction with the legal investigation that was now threatening his comfortable assumptions about property ownership. "Marcus, what are you suggesting?" I asked innocently. "Are you implying that your father might have legal rights that were violated when you kicked me out before Christmas?" I wanted him to directly acknowledge his illegal actions before revealing the full scope of his legal problems. That's when Marcus began realizing there might be serious consequences for his Christmas eviction that he had never considered. "Dad, please tell me you didn't hire a lawyer to fight us about the house," he said desperately. "We can work this out as a family without involving legal professionals and making everything complicated." The panic in his voice told me he was starting to understand that property law doesn't care about family convenience. "Marcus, what legal problems are you worried about?" I asked directly. "I thought you said I needed to leave because the house belonged to you now." I wanted him to start explaining his understanding of property ownership before revealing how wrong he had been about his legal authority. Within 2 hours of our phone conversation, my motel room received an unexpected visit from Marcus and Jessica, both looking completely panicked and defeated. They had driven straight from their house to confront me about the legal situation that was threatening their comfortable lifestyle. "Dad, we need to talk about whatever you've done with lawyers and police," Marcus said urgently as they stood in my motel doorway. "Come in," I said calmly, enjoying their obvious distress about facing legal consequences for their actions. "What seems to be the problem with lawyers and police?" I wanted to hear them explain their panic before revealing the full scope of their legal violations and the consequences they were about to face. Jessica was the first to break down and admit their growing fears about the legal investigation. "Robert, we got a call from the police department's Civil Enforcement Division asking about your living arrangements and whether you left the house voluntarily," she said frantically. "They wanted to know if we had legal authority to make you move out before Christmas." Her confession revealed that the authorities were already investigating their illegal eviction. They also asked for copies of all the property transfer documents and any agreements about your occupancy rights, Marcus added desperately. "Dad, what did you tell them about our situation?" He was realizing that his Christmas eviction might have been more than just a family disagreement. It might have been an actual crime with legal consequences. I decided it was time to give them a hint about the legal problems they had created through their illegal actions. "Marcus, when you accepted the deed transfer 18 months ago, did you actually read the legal documents you were signing?" I asked calmly. "Because there might be some important details about property rights that you never understood or considered." "Dad, what are you talking about?" Marcus asked with growing dread in his voice. He was starting to realize that his assumptions about property ownership might have been completely wrong from the beginning. "We own the house now, so we have the right to decide who lives there." His statement revealed his complete misunderstanding of the legal agreements he had signed. "Marcus, ownership of property and authority to remove occupants are two different things under the law," I explained patiently. "Just because your name is on a deed doesn't mean you can illegally evict someone who has protected occupancy rights." The education about property law was beginning, and Marcus was starting to understand the magnitude of his legal mistakes. Jessica tried to minimize their legal exposure by suggesting that everything had been a simple misunderstanding. "Robert, "We never meant to evict you illegally," she said desperately. "We just thought it would be better for everyone if you had your own place instead of living with us." But her explanation ignored the legal protections that guaranteed my right to stay in that house regardless of their personal preferences. The son who had wanted me gone was learning that Christmas evictions don't override legal agreements about property occupancy. After Marcus and Jessica's panicked visit to my motel room, I realized I needed solid evidence to support my legal case against their illegal eviction. If Marcus was going to challenge my life estate rights or claim that our arrangement was different than the signed documents, I wanted bulletproof documentation of 20 years of property investments and financial contributions that proved my legal standing. I spent the next day gathering decades of records that told the complete story of who really built and owned that house. I started by organizing every bank statement and financial record related to the house purchase and improvements since I bought it in 1998. The original mortgage documents showed that I had paid $240,000 for the property over 15 years. Every monthly payment of $1,600 had come from my plumbing business income, while Marcus was still living at home and going to college. The property improvement records were particularly important for establishing my financial investment in the house beyond just the original purchase price. New roof in 2005, $18,000. Kitchen renovation in 2008, $22,000. Bathroom updates in 2012, $15,000. Central air conditioning system in 2015, $12,000. Every major improvement had been funded by my business profits and labor. I found receipts for landscaping and exterior improvements that showed my ongoing investment in maintaining and enhancing the property value. Deck construction, $8,000. Driveway paving, $6,000. Fence installation, $4,000. Professional landscaping, $3,000 annually for 10 years. The total improvements and maintenance over 20 years exceeded $80,000 beyond the original purchase price. But the most important evidence was the detailed financial records showing exactly how much money I had given Marcus over the years before the deed transfer. College tuition payments, $48,000. House down payment assistance, $40,000. Car purchases, $36,000. Wedding expenses, $12,000. Emergency loans that were never repaid, $22,000. The total financial support exceeded $158,000. The deed transfer documents from 18 months ago clearly showed that my decision to give Marcus the property was based on his financial crisis and my desire to help him avoid foreclosure. Transfer made in consideration of grantee's assumption of all mortgage obligations and grantor's retention of life estate rights. The legal language stated, Marcus got the deed to solve his money problems, not because he had earned ownership through his own investments. I also found the mortgage assumption documents that proved Marcus had taken over my loan payments as part of the deed transfer agreement. Original remaining balance when Marcus assumed the mortgage, $82,000. Monthly payment obligation transferred to Marcus, $1,600. Property tax responsibility transferred to Marcus, $3,000 annually. He got a house worth $180,000 while assuming only $82,000 in debt. The property tax records over 20 years showed my consistent payments and responsible ownership long before Marcus ever lived there as an adult. Annual property tax payments averaging $2,800 for 2 decades totaled over $56,000 that I had paid while building equity in the house. Marcus had paid property taxes for exactly 18 months since the deed transfer. But the most damaging evidence against Marcus was the insurance claim history that showed how I had protected and maintained the property through various challenges. Roof damage from hail in 2010. Insurance claim for $16,000 in repairs that I managed and supervised. Basement flooding in 2014. $8,000 in restoration work that I coordinated. Tree damage in 2018. $4,000 in repairs completed under my supervision. I documented the utility payments and maintenance contracts that proved my ongoing financial responsibility for the property even after the deed transfer. Electric bills averaging $200 monthly. Gas heating costs averaging $150 monthly during winter months. Water and sewer bills averaging $80 monthly. Internet and cable services, $120 monthly. Marcus had never paid a single utility bill for the house where he now lived. The home warranty and service contracts were all still in my name because Marcus had never bothered to transfer the accounts or take responsibility for maintenance obligations. HVAC service contract, $600 annually. Pest control service, $300 annually. Lawn care service, $1,200 annually. Appliance warranties, $400 annually. I was still financially responsible for maintaining a house where Marcus claimed full ownership authority. Most importantly, I found evidence that Marcus had been using my house as collateral for additional loans, beyond just paying off his original mortgage. Home equity line of credit opened 6 months ago. $30,000 borrowed against my property. Second mortgage application pending. $45,000 requested using my house as security. Marcus was treating my property like his personal ATM while illegally evicting the person with life estate rights. The legal correspondence from my attorney David Morrison clearly outlined Marcus's violations of our deed transfer agreement and his exposure to criminal charges. Illegal eviction of person with life estate rights constitutes breach of contract and potential criminal harassment, David's letter stated. Client has grounds for immediate deed reversal and civil damages for violation of occupancy rights. Tomorrow, I would use all this evidence to show the police exactly why Marcus's Christmas eviction constituted illegal removal of someone with protected property rights. 3 days after I gave all my evidence to the Police Civil Enforcement Division, they paid Marcus an official visit that changed everything. It was January 11th at 10:30 in the morning when Officer Patricia Williams and Detective Mike Rodriguez knocked on the front door of my house, where Marcus and Jessica were living illegally. I wasn't there to see it happen, but Marcus called me 20 minutes later in complete panic about what the police had told him. "Dad, the police just left our house, and they said I committed illegal eviction," Marcus said frantically into the phone. "They have all kinds of paperwork about life estate, rights, and property law violations." "What did you tell them about our situation?" His voice was shaking as he realized that his Christmas eviction had attracted serious legal attention from law enforcement. "Marcus, what did the officers explain to you about property law?" I asked calmly, like I was genuinely curious about their legal education. "Did they help you understand the difference between owning a deed and having authority to remove occupants?" I wanted to hear exactly what consequences Marcus was facing before revealing my role in his legal crisis. "Dad, they said that kicking you out before Christmas was illegal eviction because you have something called life estate rights," Marcus continued desperately. "They showed me legal documents that prove I can't make you leave the house even though my name is on the deed." He was learning about property law the hard way, after assuming that ownership meant complete control. Officer Williams had apparently been very thorough in explaining Marcus's legal violations and potential consequences. "Marcus, the officer said I could face criminal charges for harassment and illegal eviction," he told me with panic in his voice. She also said you could sue me for violating your occupancy rights and force me to give the house back completely. The reality of legal consequences was hitting him hard. Marcus, did the police help you understand what life estate rights mean? I asked patiently, enjoying his education about property law. Because it sounds like there might have been some important legal details in our deed transfer that you never bothered to read or understand. I wanted him to acknowledge his ignorance about the agreements he had signed. Detective Rodriguez had apparently reviewed all the financial evidence I had provided about Marcus's illegal use of my property for additional loans. Dad, they know about the home equity line of credit and the second mortgage application, Marcus said desperately. They said using someone else's property as collateral without their permission could be fraud charges on top of the illegal eviction. His financial schemes were being exposed along with his housing violations. The police had also discovered that Marcus was still using my property for his mailing address and legal residence, while claiming he had authority to evict me from the same address. Marcus, the officers said your voter registration and driver's license show this house as your legal address, I pointed out. How can you legally live somewhere while illegally evicting the person with life estate rights to the same property? Within an hour of Marcus's phone call, Jessica called me separately to beg for help with their legal crisis. Robert, the police said we could lose the house completely if you decide to pursue deed reversal, she said through tears. They explained that illegal eviction of someone with life estate rights can void the entire property transfer. Her panic revealed how serious their legal situation had become. Jessica, did the officers help you understand why Christmas evictions don't override signed legal agreements? I asked directly. Because it sounds like you and Marcus made some assumptions about property ownership that weren't based on actual law. I was enjoying their legal education about the consequences of disrespecting family members with protected rights. The police had apparently been very clear about Marcus and Jessica's options for resolving their legal violations. Robert, they said we need to either let you move back into the house immediately or face criminal charges and civil lawsuits, Jessica explained frantically. They also said we might have to pay damages for the illegal eviction and your motel expenses. The comfortable life they thought they had secured was falling apart. Detective Rodriguez had reviewed the timeline of events and concluded that Marcus's eviction was clearly premeditated and intentional. The officer said telling you to be gone by Christmas morning shows deliberate intent to illegally remove someone with protected occupancy rights, Jessica reported. They have your motel receipts as proof that we forced you to find alternative housing through illegal means. But the most shocking revelation for Marcus and Jessica was learning about the deed reversal clause that could cost them the house completely. Robert, the police said that if you choose to reverse the deed transfer because of our illegal actions, we would lose all ownership rights and still owe the money we borrowed against the property, Jessica said in desperation. They could lose everything while still owing the loans they had taken. The police had also explained that my life estate rights meant I could choose to forgive their violations or pursue maximum legal consequences. They said it's completely up to you whether we face criminal charges or just have to let you move back home, Marcus told me during his second phone call. Dad, please don't destroy our family over this misunderstanding about property rights. Marcus, this wasn't a misunderstanding, I replied firmly. This was you illegally evicting your father from his legal residence because you thought you could get away with it. The education about respect and consequences was finally beginning for my son, who had taken my generosity for granted. The son who thought he could steal my house was learning exactly what legal property ownership really means. After the police visit that exposed Marcus's illegal eviction, my phone rang constantly for 3 days straight, with desperate calls from my son and daughter-in-law. They had finally understood the serious legal consequences they faced for kicking me out of my own home before Christmas. Marcus was panicking about criminal charges, while Jessica was terrified about losing the house they thought they owned, free and clear. "Dad, please come over so we can talk about this situation face to face," Marcus begged during his 4th call that day. "I know we made mistakes, but we can fix everything if you just give us another chance." His desperation was obvious as he realized that his comfortable assumptions about property ownership had been completely wrong from the beginning. But I wasn't ready to make things easy for someone who had abandoned his father during the holidays. "Marcus, why should I come to a house where you told me I wasn't welcome?" I asked calmly. "You made it very clear on December 18th that I needed to be gone by Christmas morning." I wanted him to remember exactly how cruel he had been during our last conversation. "Dad, I was wrong about everything," Marcus admitted for the first time since this crisis began. "I should have read the legal documents more carefully before assuming I had the right to make you move out." His confession revealed that he was finally understanding the magnitude of his legal violations and disrespectful behavior toward his father. Jessica got on the phone to add her own desperate apology for supporting Marcus's illegal eviction. "Robert, I'm so sorry for telling you that taking care of elderly relatives was too stressful for our family," she said through tears. "I never realized that you had legal rights that protected your ability to stay in the house regardless of our personal feelings." Her apology felt hollow after weeks of treating me like an unwanted burden. "Jessica, did the police help you understand that my age doesn't eliminate my property rights?" I asked directly. "Because you and Marcus seemed to think that being elderly meant I could be discarded whenever you found my presence inconvenient." I wanted her to acknowledge the ageism and disrespect that had motivated their illegal actions. That evening, Marcus and Jessica showed up at my motel room unannounced, both looking completely defeated and scared about their legal future. "Dad, we drove here to apologize in person and beg you not to press criminal charges," Marcus said as they stood in my doorway. "We know we violated your rights, and we want to make things right between us as a family." Their public humiliation was beginning as neighbors watched them grovel outside my motel room. "Come in," I said calmly, enjoying their obvious distress about facing real consequences for their actions. "What exactly are you apologizing for?" I wanted to hear them acknowledge the specific ways they had violated my rights and disrespected our family relationship. Marcus sat down on the uncomfortable motel chair and started listing his mistakes and legal violations. "Dad, I illegally evicted you from property where you have life estate rights," he said slowly. "I used your house as collateral for loans without your permission. I treated you like a burden instead of respecting the man who raised me and gave me everything." His confession was comprehensive but motivated by legal fear rather than genuine remorse. Jessica added her own admission of wrongdoing and disrespectful treatment. "Robert, I supported Marcus's decision to kick you out because I wanted privacy and space for our family," she said honestly. "I never considered your feelings or your legal rights to live in the home where you had lived for 25 years. Her honesty was refreshing, but came only after police involvement had forced accountability. "We're offering to let you move back into the house immediately with no restrictions on your occupancy," Marcus continued desperately. "You can live there as long as you want, and we'll never again suggest that you should find somewhere else to go." His offer was exactly what the legal documents had guaranteed me all along, but he was presenting it like some generous concession. but I had one important question about their motivation for apologizing. Marcus, are you sorry because you violated my rights and hurt my feelings? Or are you sorry because the police told you about criminal charges and deed reversal? I asked directly. Because your timing suggests that legal consequences motivated this apology more than genuine remorse for abandoning your father. Marcus tried to claim that his regret was genuine and not just about avoiding legal problems. Dad, I'm truly sorry for treating you badly regardless of any legal issues, he said. I realize now that I was selfish and disrespectful to someone who deserved my love and gratitude for everything you've done for me throughout my life. But his words felt rehearsed rather than heartfelt. Marcus, 3 weeks ago you told me I needed to be gone by Christmas morning, I reminded him. Now you're saying I can live in the house as long as I want. Which statement reflects your true feelings about having your father in your life? I wanted him to confront the contradiction between his Christmas cruelty and his current desperation. Jessica tried to explain their change in attitude by claiming they had learned important lessons. Robert, we've realized that family relationships are more important than privacy or convenience, she said. We want you to be part of our children's lives and our family celebrations going forward. Her statement ignored the fact that they had explicitly excluded me from Christmas celebrations just 3 weeks earlier. After listening to their apologies and promises for over an hour, I was ready to announce my decision about their legal violations and our future relationship. Marcus and Jessica, here are my conditions for dropping the criminal charges and not reversing the deed transfer, I said clearly. First, you will publicly apologize to our entire family for illegally evicting me and explain what you learned about respecting elderly relatives. Second, you will reimburse me for all motel expenses and legal fees related to your illegal eviction, I continued firmly. Third, you will attend family counseling to address the entitled attitudes that led to this crisis. Both of them were nodding eagerly, willing to agree to anything that would resolve their legal problems. Most importantly, you will treat me with genuine respect and include me in family activities, not because you're afraid of legal consequences, but because I'm your father and grandfather, I concluded. I will not tolerate being treated like a burden or having my rights violated again in the future. They both agreed immediately to all my conditions. The son who had wanted me gone was learning that Christmas evictions have permanent consequences. 6 months have passed since Marcus and Jessica were forced to apologize for my illegal Christmas eviction, and I'm here today to tell you exactly how my life changed after setting clear legal boundaries with family members who had taken my generosity for granted. The shock Marcus faced when he discovered that Christmas evictions don't override life estate rights taught him lessons about respect and property law that his comfortable assumptions had never required him to learn. Marcus followed through on every condition I had set for dropping the criminal charges and avoiding deed reversal. He sent written apologies to our entire extended family, explaining his illegal eviction and what he had learned about respecting elderly relatives. I was wrong to kick my father out of his legal residence, he wrote to everyone. Robert Chen deserves respect for the sacrifices he made and the legal rights he retained when transferring the property deed. His public acknowledgement of wrongdoing was exactly what I had required for any chance of rebuilding our relationship. He also reimbursed me for all motel expenses and legal fees within 30 days of our agreement. Total costs for his illegal eviction: $4,300, including attorney fees, motel bills, and meals during my forced displacement. Dad, I never realized how expensive it would be to illegally evict someone, Marcus told me when writing the check. This taught me that violating people's rights has real financial consequences. Money that came directly from his savings account as punishment for his Christmas cruelty. But the most important change was in Marcus's attitude toward me and our living arrangement in the house. No more suggestions about finding my own place or complaints about needing privacy from elderly relatives. No more assumptions about his authority to make decisions about who could live in the house where I held life estate rights. Dad, I'm grateful that you're still willing to live here after what I put you through, he said genuinely during a family dinner 4 months later. Marcus and Jessica completed 6 months of family counseling about entitlement issues and respect for elderly family members. The therapist helped us understand that we were treating Dad like a burden instead of appreciating someone who had given us everything, Jessica told me after their final session. We learned that financial help doesn't create obligations to tolerate disrespectful treatment. The professional guidance had clearly improved their understanding of healthy family relationships. My living situation in the house became more comfortable and respectful than it had been in years. Marcus took over all the household maintenance and expenses as required by our deed transfer agreement, while treating me like a valued family member instead of an unwanted tenant. Dad, is there anything you need for your room or any improvements you'd like me to make? Became a regular question that showed genuine concern for my comfort. The grandchildren were much happier having their grandfather back in the house for daily activities and family celebrations. Grandpa, we missed you when you had to stay at the motel, my 8-year-old grandson told me. It's better when you're here to help us with homework and tell us stories. The kids had never understood why their parents had tried to get rid of their grandfather right before Christmas. Most importantly, Marcus started including me in major family decisions and asking for my advice about important matters. Dad, what do you think about this job opportunity I'm considering? Became typical conversations that showed respect for my experience and wisdom. Should we refinance the mortgage to get a better interest rate? These questions demonstrated that he valued my input instead of treating me like someone whose opinions didn't matter. My plumbing business continued thriving without the stress of managing difficult family relationships or worrying about housing security. Chen Plumbing Services completed several major commercial projects this year, including a new office building that will employ 200 people. Every success reminded me of the satisfaction that comes from building something meaningful while having a stable home base for my personal life. I also started dating again for the first time since Linda died, something I hadn't felt emotionally ready for while dealing with family conflicts and housing instability. Robert, you seem more confident and peaceful lately, my friend Carol observed during our first dinner date. Resolving that situation with Marcus was good for your emotional well-being. She was right that protecting my legal rights had improved my overall happiness and openness to new experiences. The most satisfying part of this outcome was seeing how my legal action had educated other family members about treating elderly relatives with proper respect and understanding their rights. Uncle Robert did exactly the right thing, my nephew told Marcus. You can't illegally evict family members and expect them to just accept mistreatment because of their age. The lesson extended beyond just Marcus to influence our entire family's understanding of legal boundaries and respect. Marcus eventually thanked me for teaching him important lessons about property law and family relationships through legal consequences rather than just family arguments. Dad, I'm glad you fought back when I violated your rights, he told me 6 months later. I learned more about respect and responsibility from facing real consequences than I ever would have from just being lectured about my behavior. His appreciation for my legal action showed genuine growth in understanding accountability. Looking back on this entire experience, I learned crucial lessons about family relationships and legal boundaries that every person should understand. First, generosity toward family members doesn't eliminate your legal rights or create obligations to tolerate disrespectful treatment. Marcus had assumed that my deed transfer gave him authority to treat me however he wanted, but life estate rights protected my interests regardless of his attitudes. Second, legal consequences are sometimes necessary to create real change in people's behavior toward family members. Marcus's apologies and promises would never have led to genuine respect if he hadn't faced criminal charges and potential deed reversal for his illegal actions. Only by experiencing serious legal problems did he learn to value our relationship properly. Most importantly, I learned that standing up for your legal rights protects not just yourself, but sets important boundaries that improve family relationships for everyone involved. At 68 years old, I finally have the respect and security I always deserved, but had been afraid to demand through legal action. Today, Marcus treats me like a valued father instead of a burden to be managed or eliminated. Our conversations focus on genuine family connection rather than his convenience or privacy concerns. He learned that property ownership comes with legal obligations that can't be ignored just because someone finds family relationships inconvenient. If you are still here and enjoyed this story, please like this video. It really helps me know you want more content like this. If this story gave you some value or made you think, please share it with your friends or someone who needs to hear this message. If you have any questions or suggestions about this story, please type them in the comments below. I love reading what you think. If you want more stories like this one, please subscribe to this channel. There are many more stories coming. Remember, you teach people how to treat you by enforcing your boundaries and protecting your rights.